Old habits die hard. We've been talking about moving on into perfection, um, basing our talk in Hebrews 6:1. Therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on into perfection, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God, of the doctrine of baptisms, of laying on of hands, and of resurrection from the dead, and of eternal judgment. Let's move away from the basics and start thinking about how to move into maturity, into perfection. How can we go from baby Christians, little children, into the next phase of maturity? And this is what the book of Hebrews is teaching us. And it says, what is the thing that we have to do in order to move on? We started with faith, did we not? Faith that Jesus is the Christ. And now we move on by hope. Hope is 100% belief in the promises of God, the promises that we cannot see. That is what hope is. So remember that definition, hope. 100% belief in the promises of God, the invisible things of God. Now, so we've got faith, and we're going to move on into hope. And yesterday, we were talking about this life of faith. And so I want to talk a minute about Abraham, the father of our faith. Abraham symbolizes faith. Abraham was married to Sarah. Sarah symbolizes grace. Faith was married to grace. And in long before they became faith and grace, in Genesis 12, God said, I will bless you. You go on and separate from your family, go into the land of Canaan. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. So right there, we see that God is providing a protection for them. In Genesis 14, um, Abraham, actually in Genesis 13, Abraham and Sarah moved down into the land of Egypt because of a famine. And Abraham said to Sarah, you know, Sarah, you're so beautiful. They're going to just want to take you. So just tell them I'm your brother and you're my sister. And what will happen there is that we will, we'll be safe. I'll be safe because otherwise they'll kill me to get to you. And so they did that. And God protected them. God didn't even say this, you shouldn't do this. God didn't say anything like that. But God protected them. And he told Pharaoh, because Pharaoh took Sarah, and he told Pharaoh, you need to let her go. And so Pharaoh believed God, and he gave Abraham some cattle and some stuff, and she went back to Abraham. So what we have here is, even though they've been told, I'll protect you, they're still protecting themselves. And so now in Genesis 14, we see Abraham taking the communion, the wine and the bread. He is a believer. He's a believer in God. And Melchizedek, the high priest of the order of Melchizedek, comes out and offers him bread and wine, the communion. That's Genesis 14, and we're already seeing the communion in Abraham's life. But in Genesis 15, Abraham hears the gospel of Jesus Christ. He reads it in the stars. God says, let's go out under the stars. And he says, let the stories tell you about the gospel. And then he says, count the number of the stars, as many as there are. That's how many children you will have, Abraham. That's my promise to you. So Abraham believed God. He believed the gospel, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. So now we know by Genesis 15, Abraham is righteous. You and I are righteous. We believe in the gospel. But sometimes old habits die hard, right? And I want to talk about what we can do about that. So by Genesis 16, Abraham's righteous, been made righteous, and he walks in the flesh. God said, you're going to have children. And Abraham said, well, we're not having children, me and Sarah. So Sarah says, well, just go get and take my maid, and you can have a child with her. He walked in the flesh. He said, I will produce the thing that God promised. Instead of hope, believing the promises of God, I'll just do it myself. And so he went and he had a child with Hagar, and that is Ishmael. But that was a walk in the flesh. He did it in human effort, in human power. It had nothing to do with God. Human effort, human power, walk in the flesh. So sometimes the righteous walk in the flesh. That's what happens sometimes. And we don't want to do that. Remember what Paul said, we walk by the Spirit. We do not walk in the flesh. But we continue on. So in Genesis 17, Abraham got a name change. He had been called Abram, but God changed his name to Abraham. Abraham, you hear that? That's the breath of life from God, that H sound, the breath of life into Abraham. And he was now made the father of many nations by grace, the breath of life. Now, Sarah, she used to be called Sarai, but he also put the H sound in her name, Sarah. And that became the breath of life into Sarah. And she would be the mother of many nations, the mother of kings. These are the promises that these people received. And this was after they walked in the flesh. This was after that. So they're righteous. They walk in the flesh. Then God gives them new names, name change. You're under grace. I need to remind you you're under grace. How else did God remind them that they're under grace? He gave Abraham the seal of circumcision. Paul in Romans 4 says that's the seal of righteousness. That says to you, Abraham, you are righteous. So he gave him a name change. You are righteous. And he gave him a seal of righteousness, circumcision. Now, in case they didn't know it before, they know it now. They are righteous. That's Genesis 17. So immediately in Genesis 18, the Lord and two angels come to Abraham's tent. They come in the heat of the day. And we see that they start talking about the fact that they're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And what does Abraham say? What is his big topic? Are you going to destroy the righteous? He's learning about what it means to be righteous. It means you're protected. Will God destroy the righteous? No. God said no. Basically, he said, no, I won't destroy the city. And he went all the way down to if there are 10 righteous. And even if there was one righteous, God would not destroy the city till he pulls him out of the city. When he pulls Lot out and says, takes his hand and says, you're coming with me, you're righteous, and you are not going to be destroyed with this city. So Abraham learns that being righteous is a protective status. It is a status, and it is a gift of God by grace. Okay, so yet old habits die hard, because even in Genesis 20, after all of this, there's a famine again, and Abraham and Sarah go south into the land south of Jerusalem to get food. And again, they pull the old trick, I'm going to tell them that I'm your sister and you're my brother. I know the drill, Abraham. And they do. They see Sarah. She must have been like a superstar. She must have looked great, because they said, the king there said, oh, I want her. I want her. And so he brings her into his harem. But before he can touch her, God protects her. God protects Abraham and Sarah yet again. And he does again not mention that what they're doing is really a walk in the flesh, again, trying to protect themselves, even though he knows that he's righteous. He knows it by two things, his name change and the circumcision. And he knows that the righteous are protected. Yet they do their old trick. Old habits die hard. Do you have old habits that die hard? Do you? I do. So let's look at why we do these things. I think it's the same reason that we do the old habits that were there from before our salvation. We still can do them, is because the same reason that Abraham and Sarah did it. So let's look at that. We remember we have to the perfection, the moving toward maturity requires hope, believing the promises. And what did Jesus tell us when he had the power to make the fig tree wither? He said, you got to have faith in God. You got to cast out that mountain. You've got to cast out the mountain that governs you. What mountain was governing Abraham? Fear. Fear was the government over Abraham. He's this one little guy with this gorgeous wife. And he realizes this alone causes him danger, and he solves it himself. But it's because he fears. We need to cast out the fear. Why do you do what you do? Really think about that. There's something in your life, I'm sure of it, that you don't want to be doing that you do. Why are you doing it? What's the mountain that's governing you? It's usually fear. I need to protect myself, or I'm afraid, So, the things I do make me not afraid, whatever they are. So Jesus said, have faith in God. Cast out that mountain, in this case, fear. Cast it out. Cast it into the sea. Remove it. And he said in Mark 11, he says, have faith in God, and whosoever shall say to this mountain, in this case, it was the mountain of the Pharisees, legalism. They were under legalistic works of the flesh. And he said, cast it out. Legalism, be removed, and be cast into the sea, and do not doubt in your heart. Do not believe you're being judged. Do not believe God is against you. You're not under that mountain anymore. You're not being judged under the law of Moses. So cast it out, but believe that you are not judged by God in this matter. And then believe in God. Why? Because the things which you are asking for in the past and even currently are coming to pass. So you can believe in God. When you ask, you are receiving. And then he says that causes you to believe. Believe because when you ask, you receive. When you ask, you receive, and you believe. And he says, when you get that down, when you get that thing organized in your head, that when I'm asked I ask all the time and God gives it to me. Does he give to you every time? Yes, he gives to you every time. Does it look like the thing you commanded God to give him? No, not always. God's not, your servant. Here it is. You ask for something, and the Spirit of God may change the thing because he knows what's really needed, and God gives that. God gives that. So when you ask, you do receive. It just might be according to commandments to him, but then you do receive. And when you receive, you believe, and your belief is stronger and stronger. So Jesus said, do not doubt, do not be judged in your heart, cast out the mountain, and then believe, because you are receiving when you believe. And then when you get that under your belt, you will start asking and receiving and believing all the time. You will have whatever you ask. That is the process for overcoming old habits that die hard. We don't walk in the flesh. What we identify, what is really the mountain that's causing this behavior? What is it? Is it legalism? Is it fear? Whatever it is, I try to identify it, cast it out, believe you're not judged under any law, that you are God's, believe in him, have faith in him, have faith in God. And then you will cast out that mountain. No more. I will have it no more, that mountain of fear. I will trust God. And then you ask for the things you need, and God will answer. God does answer. And in this, our cycle of faith builds. Ask, receive, believe, faith. Ask, receive, believe, faith. Ask, receive, believe. Whoa. And it's building. This prayer, asking, requires that you cast out the mountain and believe, just a little belief. And then you will cycle into a gigantic belief. The mountain in your life will be faith in God. It won't be the little thing that you cast out before. All right, that's all I have today. But remember, all habits die hard. Even Abraham, who walked in faith, who knew he was righteous, who had taken the bread and the wine, who had the seal of circumcision, even Abraham, the old habit. Sarah, tell him you're my sister. They did that more than once. They did it early days. They did it later days. Just tell them you're my sister. But they feared. But God protects righteous people. All right, here we go. So let's see what we got.